take projection.
It's Friday morning, and you know what that means. It's time for another episode of the Alabama Slam Podcast. I'm your host, Corey Hanna.
What's going on, guys? It's Patrick Akers.
And we've got an exciting show planned out. It's a little different than usual. Usually we record Thursday afternoon after work, and we've had some time. We've kind of talked through how the events of the previous night went on the show. But today we're recording at 7 in the morning, a little different. So we haven't really talked through this at all, so we're getting legit first reactions from each other. So I want to go ahead and get right into Dynamite. Last night it was a pay-per-view caliber card. Excellent show. We've had basically 4 straight weeks of excellent Dynamite shows. And oddly enough, the one match that I did have a problem with was one that started the show off last night. With Claudio versus Chris Jericho for the Ring of Honor title. And hated that. I'm going to go ahead and just say I hated the results.
Really?
Yeah. And I get it. I figure the only reason they did it is so that Tony Khan can go to Warner or whoever they're trying to get a Ring of Honor TV deal and be like, hey, look, Chris Jericho's our champ. That's... I love watching Claudio wrestle, but to say Chris Jericho's our champ is way more enticing to a network than saying Claudio's our champ.
True, maybe. First off, the match was really good.
Yeah, I thought the match was great, but I didn't like the outcome.
The avalanche powerbomb spot into the Hurricane off the top, was just a thing of beauty. So here's the thing. Claudio doesn't need that Ring of Honor title because it doesn't really do anything for him, because as much as Tony Khan's wanted to say that Ring of Honor is not going to be like a secondary or like a B product, it is. That's what it's going to be. You're going to have your main guys on Dynamite and Rampage, and you're going to put the dudes on Ring of Honor in that you were hoping to kind of build up a little bit. So you don't want Claudio eating a loss in that kind of situation. A dude that can have a loss while at the same time elevating the title because he's one of the 15 greatest professional wrestlers of all time is a dude like Chris Jericho. And so if you'll notice, last night Jericho wins, and then who walks out with the pure title? Daniel Garcia. If you were going, you're going to use Jericho to try to make a star. So do they do with Garcia what Ring of Honor did with Danielson back in the day, where they unify those two titles at some point? But I would imagine like Chris Jericho is going to get a pretty long run here with this Ring of Honor title. They're going to play up the fact that Ring of Honor is the most professional wrestling company that's ever existed, and here is this quote unquote sports entertainer who has now brought dishonor to Ring of Honor. That's a cool little gimmick they're going to have. And Claudio's going to go on and do something else, because it looks like they might be gearing up to do a big Blackpool Combat Club type thing with maybe MJF or whatever. So you kind of you need to extract that title away from that so that you can do something else with the Ring of Honor title while Claudio is going to be doing his thing. So yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was a smart call. Like you said, it's smart if they're trying to get a TV deal. Here's a dude who's been on professional wrestling television for going on 25 years now as the champion. And he's going to bring, I think, when... This decision makes me think they might be close to getting a new show.
That was my thinking last night. I was like, okay, if they're close to a deal, then he can be like, hey, look, one of the biggest names in wrestling is our champ.
And if they're close to a deal... Again, we'll jump forward just ahead. I think there was a FTR Gun Club segment.
Yeah.
If you're close to a deal, do you want to get the Ring of Honor belts off of FTR and put them on Gun Club? Not saying that, obviously in that kind of situation there would be some kind of smodgy finish where FTR gets screwed out of them, because Gun Club is not a good enough of a tag team to beat FTR. They haven't been presented that way. But you can do some kind of schmoz that gets those Ring of Honor belts off FTR. So now you have a full Ring of Honor show that has Gun Club as the tag champs, and you can spin FTR and they can go off and do something else. So it seems like a lot of these, they just use these belts as like placeholders. Like, let's give little Claudio a pop when he comes back. Let's give FTR, let's have the image of them walking out with all the titles. But now if there's a TV deal imminent and a show's coming up, now it's time to get serious about who are going to be our players on this card. Who are we? You don't want FTR really jumping back and forth. They're a big name act. They should be on Dynamite and Rampage.
Right.
Chris Jericho he can kind of float back and forth because he can eat losses and because he's 30 years in his career at this point. So I liked it. I thought it was really, really smart. And boy, if they do go the route of having Daniel Garcia dethrone Chris Jericho, and you set up Daniel Garcia as the face of Ring of Honor, as the pure champion and the world champion, that really would show that they're putting a lot of stock in Garcia, and I mean, probably smartly so. So
that could be the move. I mean, it does make me think that a TV deal is imminent, though.
Yeah, or otherwise you would, you just wouldn't do it now.
Right.
You would just keep it on same as normal.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it was a good way to start off the show, though. I mean, any way you pack it last night, there could have been a good way to start the show, but I thought it was a solid first match. Like I said, when it happened, I was like, oh, I hate this, and then I thought about it for 15 minutes, and I was like, okay, well, I get it. So it made sense. But they jumped immediately into the tag titles with Swerve in Our Glory versus the Acclaimed. And this one kind of went down the way I thought it was.
Yeah. I will say, before we talk about the actual match, AEW, like, embracing hip-hop culture is, like, it's two things. One, it's just a smart business move, right? Two, it's just cool to see.
Yeah.
To see, like, Fabulous come out with Swerve, to see it was DJ Woo Kid and have Excalibur do the woo every time. Like, that's fun. But, like, also going back a couple weeks ago, Buffalo with the guy that was there, I'm blanking on his name, but like that's something WWE's really never done.
Yeah.
And that has, as hip hop has emerged as sort of the most popular genre of music in today's world, that's a real smart business decision to be like, hey, and Tony Khan probably grew up. He's one of those kids that when hip hop really started taking off in the 90s, that's when he was in his youth. So he's grown up with that kind of stuff. That's something that the other side never really embraced or hasn't embraced that much. So I think that's really smart. And yeah, this match was that Acclaimed pop when they came out.
Yeah, you could kind of tell.
Was
like,
insane.
The crowd was ready for it. Solid match. Keith Lee continues to amaze me as a big man and the shit that he can do in the ring.
Yeah.
And he did even more last night. And I was like, every time he would do something, I was like, holy shit.
And they set up a little dynamic. Swerve has fully leaned into this heel gimmick. Mm-hmm. And he's played it up perfectly. He is such a natural heel. I think he can also be a really over babyface at some point too, just because he's so cool. But he's really going all in on this heel shtick. Keith Lee's kind of been a little bit more reserved, right? There was that spot in the match last night where Caster and Bowens do the scissor thing and Swerve drop kicks both of them in the back, and Lee's like, come on, man, like, hey. But you see that dog come out and Swerve. So, that is setting up little breadcrumbs to decide down the line you can do any kind of thing, right? You could have these two remain sort of a babyface heel tag team. You could have one of them turn on the other one. A lot of good stuff there.
I actually kind of thought, because they'd been setting up Swerve turning on Keith this whole time. And when the match ended last night, I thought maybe Keith was going to switch on.
And you could do that too. And that's what I said. I think that's the more natural route, because Keith he's a fucking behemoth of a human being. It makes such a natural, easy monster heel that you can ease him into. And yeah, I think Swerve has as good as he is at being a heel, I think he has even more potential as a babyface. But then, yeah, this match wasn't as good as their match at All Out.
No, it had some moments though.
It had its moments, but that just goes to show you, like, that match at All Out, that really was like lightning in a bottle. So going back 3 weeks ago, it might have, if this was always going to be the goal, you were going to have it get to Grand Slam and have the Acclaim take the tag titles. Watching that match at All Out, it maybe would have been the right call to call an audible and just be like, we'll figure the Acclaimed will just come in Grand Slam as the champs, but like we got something special that's happening here in Chicago. And it just goes to show you, like, even when you try and the crowd is hyped up for it, it's hard to capture those moments again. That's what makes them special. Not to say this match was bad in any sense. It was good. It just wasn't. I mean, the match 3 weeks ago was one of the best tag team pay-per-view matches AEW is probably going to have.
Yeah, and it could have been too, because I don't remember the order of All Out, but didn't that match come right after one where I was like,
Yeah, so it kind of had dipped in the crowd when they saw the Acclaim. They were so ready for that moment.
Yeah.
But it's still cool. They win it in their hometown. And I'm going to be honest, man, I got a little teary-eyed when they won the titles, like, because this is something that no other art form can really do, which is you take these men and women and you actually get to see their growth and have it be gradual over time. People were like, oh, the Acclaim caught fire here recently. No, they started on Dark years ago. I think someone posted on Twitter, like, their first entrance as a tag team is the Acclaimed. It was during the pandemic. There's nobody in the stands.
Yeah.
And they come out, and they didn't even have the rap gimmick thing down yet. The entrance music was different. So this thing has evolved and grown and changed over years. And to now, like, what makes it so special is that, like, if you go back 2 years ago and you run, like, an algorithm that, like, simulates AEW and, like, give me who the champions are going to be in 2 years, that algorithm's never going to predict the Acclaim being in this situation, right? Not when you have people who are ex-WWE guys who have a lot of buzz on the indies. Like, they didn't have any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And so to see them come from where they came from to now, there was thousands, tens of thousands of people in an arena chanting their name, and they're winning the AEW World Tag Team titles. Like, that's the magic of pro wrestling in a nutshell. Like, that's what it is. That's what makes this art form, when it ascends to those heights, that's what makes it beautiful to watch. And so, yeah, it's fucking 11 o'clock at night, and I'm sitting there getting teary-eyed by myself because it's, I mean, it is, those are those moments that only this art form can create. So
yeah, we had one of those AEW director missed a punch or missed a call happenings last night, where Bowens hit Swerve with the move, Swerve's laid out, Caster's on the top rope.
Yeah.
And then it was the camera angle from basically the corner where Caster was, but he was on the ground, and then all of a sudden, boom, Caster was on the top rope, and then all of a sudden Caster's on the ground awkwardly.
Yeah.
I guess his knee gave out.
There were a lot of, like, why are they cutting to this camera angle now moments. There was the shot that they kept showing repeatedly. And I get it, you want to show off the scope of the stadium and show the stage, but it was that far away wide shot where you just saw everything, but they cut to it at just, like, crazy moments.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, man, I would rather be, like, in there with the wrestlers. I can hear the crowd coming through the TV screen. That crowd was rowdy as hell last night.
Part of that could have been that those two motherfuckers in one angle from one side of the ring. It was the side where they didn't have many people on that side. It was like a small crowd on one side. But two motherfuckers kept holding up the belts in front of the camera every fucking time they would cut to them.
Oh, it could have been that.
They said, like, NW. They had written, like, with a Sharpie, like, NWO or whatever on it. And I was like, okay, well, y'all are ruining the fucking camera angle over here.
And the crowd was more closed into the ring.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's just because of the way Arthur Ashe is laid out. Yeah, one thing, AEW could really experiment about how professional wrestling is broadcasted, I think. I would love to see more, like, single take camera stuff. Like maybe we just follow a wrestler down from the entrance and the camera moves around and does all this. There are different ways you could do it. We're getting off on a little bit of a tangent here. But yeah, they kept cutting that camera shot last night and I was like, it was cool the first couple of times.
Yeah.
But now, like I get that there's a lot of people here and this is a cool atmosphere. Like I'm down with that. I don't need to keep seeing it over and over and over.
It definitely felt like a big-ass event.
Yeah, it had that.
Yeah,
but it felt that way going into it, you know. Once it goes into it and the pyro goes off and you give me that shot to start off the show, and then throughout the show I can hear the thing. Like I'm with it already. I don't need to keep being convinced. Like it's important because there's a lot of people here. Like I get that it's important.
You brought out the big screen ramp on the, you know.
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty slick.
Yeah. The whole layout is really awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, this one was the way it went down the way I thought it would. I felt like it was time to go ahead and put the belts on the Acclaimed, and then I also thought it was a nice move to just immediately go to FTR backstage and being like, "Hey, here we are."
Yeah, and that's what we talked about. But they started going on that tangent. We're number one contenders, but they immediately got cut off by Gun Club, and so I think you have to run because you don't want to hot potato it too much once you've just given it to the Acclaim. So you kind of have to do some kind of intermediary.
Yeah.
Where I think that the Gun Club comes in here and steals those Ring of Honor titles, but maybe something happens to where FTR says, to hell with that. We have bigger fish to fry than these guys. I
thought it was a pretty funny segment, too. Like, was it... I don't remember it exactly, the questions that they asked, but they're like, FT, are you guys, ... Yeah. I thought that was pretty funny.
There's potential with the Gun Club.
Yeah.
They have a lot of... Austin especially has a lot of his dad in him, and I know I say that a lot, but he has all the characteristics of somebody that can just be in AEW as like a mid-card type of guy for decades, you know?
They did the whole top guys out and walked off, and then Cash was like, "Okay, guys, that was funny. Now let's get serious."
Yeah,
and then they just cut. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah,
that was a nice little segment all around there. So I didn't actually write out my outline, and I can't remember which match was next.
It's Cassidy and Pac.
Okay, because I couldn't remember if it was them or the ladies division.
Yeah.
So this was a solid match too, and we mentioned last week that Pac and Cassidy have had this rivalry for a while, and it seems kind of weird because I don't know why they have this rivalry. Like, why do they hate each other so much? I get why Pac would hate Cassidy, but like,
well, they've wrestled quite a bit.
Yeah,
and if you'll remember, I think one of the most viewed YouTube videos on AEW's channel is the first Pac versus Orange Cassidy match, where Pac gets to the top and Orange Cassidy just keeps rolling to the other thing. So I think they've had this thing. Pac is presented as a real rough and tough, gruff, serious kind of wrestler, and Orange Cassidy is kind of anything but, right?
Yeah.
And so it makes for a good dynamic. And so I think this is going to be one of those things. AEW has some of these rivalries where it's just like, in the way that like Randy Orton and John Cena back in the day just had a natural rivalry. Like, even if they weren't in a program together, you could just throw them in a match and build up the history of this thing.
Well, they got good chemistry together. Like, they put on good matches. So maybe that's the other reason for it.
I think this is just one of their AEW's kind of natural. Here's the thing that these two guys have never liked each other from the get-go. Yeah. So whenever we need to do something, we can just do this as a little detour for these two guys, and we can put them in the ring and have something natural to break out of it. I thought the match was really good. They have good chemistry. Pac's body control is next level.
Yeah, it was near the end. It was one of the DDTs. Cassidy had pulled off 2 or 3 great moves in a row, and then I think it was just a DDT or something that he hit Pac with. And Pac sold the shit out of it, but the way that he was still standing, but he was leaning backwards, and it was like in a full fucking arch almost.
Yeah, I've watched. I've never seen that.
It was insane.
It requires an elite level of athleticism.
Yeah,
to pull that off, and not many people have that, right? So he's unbelievable. Some people were questioning the finish. I like the finish, him cheating. One, because the way he did it is super smart. I'm outside. The ref can't see it. The ref is looking at him while he cheats, but he can't see it because everything's turned. Right. And it gives a little more evolution to Cassidy's character. Like, oh, maybe he really is breaking into the psyche of Pac here to where this stuff is really starting to get under his skin.
And he's got to fucking cheat to.
And he's got to cheat to win. Also, I think they're probably going to move this All-Atlantic Championship away from Pac at some point because they do have the Trios title. He has the Trios title with Lucha Brothers.
Yeah.
It seems like this is Ethan Page's title to win.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to – it's about how we maneuver it now to him. I don't know if we necessarily want Ethan Page beating Pac just straight up, but we can have Orange Cassidy and Pac because, again, we have the built-in kind of rivalry. OC finally gets under the skin of Pac, takes the title from him, but who's waiting in the wings? It's Ethan Page, and he beats Orange Cassidy, who Orange Cassidy really is kind of like, I don't want to say the mascot of AEW, but when you think of like AEW, he is the type of character that can only exist in AEW. So if you're going to have a faction built on, we don't like this place because we're underutilized and we're going to band together to make sure that our interests are put at the forefront, it makes sense to have a guy from that faction like Ethan Page take it from Orange Cassidy, if that makes sense.
So let me ask you this, because my buddy Eddie hurt my feelings real bad last night, and I told him he hurt my feelings.
Uh-oh.
He said he doesn't like Cassidy. He said that he thinks that his little slaps, his little kicks to the shin are bad for business. He said it's kind of like a fuck you to the business. I was like, no. I was like, from my angle, as somebody that's only been really back into wrestling for a few years, I was like, it's a way to like kind of bridge the gap between people that have never really watched before. Like what's this guy doing? That was kind of my intrigue from the beginning. And it's like, oh, well, he's just kind of like a whatever kind of guy. And I was like, that's just him. Like, okay, well, I'm just going to fuck with you for a little bit. And then when it's time to go, I'm going to put on a fucking flying DDT or a, stun dog millionaire or something. Yeah.
I mean, he worked again. Yeah. There is the work rate that Cassidy has with the stun dog millionaire and stuff. So the stuff that people have a problem with, or all the other stuff in between, the little kicks and stuff like that. But those little kicks only work because we as wrestling fans have watched so much wrestling. So there are elements of wrestling that we recognize as universal, right? Like the dude puts the babyface in a rest hold, in a chin lock, and the crowd starts clapping, and the babyface gets the fire and comes back. There are things like that. And so Cassidy's character, a lot of it is playing on those little things, like the kicks and the building up. But then you saw last night he gets the kicks, right? And then when he goes to do the big kick usually and raises his finger up, he backs up even more and hits Pac with the drop kick. And so I think his character is evolving to be kind of a little bit more cerebral in that, okay, now I've established these things. Now how can I use it to get an advantage over my opponent? And even commentary was putting it over last night. And in terms of it being a slap to the business, I would just say, like, he's one of the top merchandise sellers AEW has, and there's a lot of fans that get behind him. So, like, if the point of this business is to get over and to make money, I don't know how it's a slap in the face whenever you have people dressing like this dude out in the crowd. And again, he's not going to be everybody's cup of tea in the way that AEW is not going to be everybody's cup of tea, right? It's a different kind of style that they're trying to present. There are going to be some people that are just going to be like, I don't really care about the wrestling. I want the stories.
Yeah.
And so I think the beauty of AEW is that it has a little bit of something for everybody in the way that maybe other promotions in the past haven't necessarily had. So, I mean, I think Orange Cassidy is amazing.
Yeah.
And like I said, you go look on the YouTube clips, I think all the the things that have done 40 and 50 and millions of views on their YouTube channel, I think they're all related to Cassidy.
Yeah, probably so. But yeah, this one kind of went the way I thought it should. I didn't think they would take the belt off Pac this soon. Yeah, I was a little surprised to see him cheat though. But I mean, it goes to like what you said, like in terms of Cassidy just being in his head, and he was clearly in his head from the very beginning.
Yeah, and so that's the evolution. Like this dude has to resort to cheating.
Yeah.
Because Cassidy hasn't figured out, and so I think it's just a stopgap to get to Ethan Page, or maybe it should be.
Yeah.
So
next up was the interim women's title with Toni Storm versus Athena versus Serena Deeb versus Britt Baker. Toni Storm comes out victorious, like I thought she would. There was one point though where I thought, okay, well they may put this on Athena for a bit. When she was holding one lady up and then caught the other, and I was like, okay, well,
yeah, and then she smashed Britt Baker's face.
Yeah,
with the flip.
Yeah,
it's wrestling. Shit happens.
Yeah,
I thought all the ladies looked really good in this. Serena Deeb is still underrated. Athena got her stuff in. Toni felt like more of a champion walking out last night. First of all, she has an amazing look. Just her ring gear, the sunglasses, the rock and roll aesthetic. And she got a little bit more crowd reaction last night, which is good. I think she can be a big name star in this division. You just kind of have to put her in these situations where she can shine. And I think she's she's way more natural on the mic than what somebody like a Thunder Rosa is.
Sure.
And so I thought everybody in this match, and of course Britt she has been what she's been in that division for a while, right? Her character is the most solid because it's been the one that has been utilized in the most kind of situations. And she just has a natural kind of charisma about her that can always keep her nestled towards the top of the card. So, yeah, I think that, we all expected Toni Storm to kind of keep the title here, but I don't think anybody expected what happened next.
Yeah, that was a no shit moment.
Yeah, that was, we talked about a couple weeks ago. Actually, it's more than a couple weeks ago at this point, when the Sasha Banks-Naomi thing started breaking out in WWE, that they walked out. We had talked about, Sasha Banks coming into WWE or to AEW, giving that women's division a boast of a real-life, legitimate superstar. Obviously, that didn't come to fruition. This is on that caliber, and maybe I would say it's even maybe a little bit more because Saraya, a.k.a. Paige from WWE, has been out of the ring for so long. And so you get the, oh, shit, she's here, plus the, oh, shit, is she going to wrestle, which it looks like she is. Commentary was putting her over.
Well, and there was at one point she was talking down to Britt and Serena outside the ring. Was it Britt and Serena?
Yeah.
Yeah, and she clearly mouthed the words, "This is my house now."
Yeah, which is her catchphrase going back.
Yeah.
And so, this is this is a huge moment.
Yeah, because I was texting you a little bit, but I was trying not to. I knew that you hadn't probably started yet, and I was like, I don't know where he is, because sometimes you're like, I'm on Twitter or whatever, I'm looking at stuff, but you're like, hey, I'm staying off the internet.
Yeah.
Kids have had the TV, and I was like, all right, I'm silent.
Yeah, this is huge, man. This is a much needed boost of star power coming into that locker room, and you don't think she's going to be motivated?
Yeah.
After almost having her career being taken from her at such a young age?
So I saw a couple of headlines yesterday afternoon that said that Tony Khan had some contacts with her recently, but I didn't read them. I was just like, okay, well, shit didn't work out. It's fine.
Yeah.
I just assumed, like, okay, well, this is the first I've heard of this. I mean, we all kind of assumed at some point that they were probably talking. But I had even seen something maybe a week or two ago that was like signs were pointing that she's probably going to end up back in WWE at some point. And so, yeah, I completely caught off guard. There was this feeling of somebody's going to come out for some reason I had
Yeah.
Like at the end, it was just kind of lingering a little too long.
We had the Jamie Hayter came out.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, oh, this is going to be the turn. And then whatever. I'm going to get derailed again doing this. I don't know what the hesitation is, unless the only hesitation is we have Saraya coming in, and we don't want to do the Britt and the Jamie stuff at the same time we're trying to do this.
Yeah.
I don't know why you can't do that.
Yeah.
Like, why couldn't Britt and Serena be on one side, Jamie Hayter be on one, and Tony and Athena be on the other side of the ring, and there is Saraya right there in the middle.
Yeah.
Anyway, whatever.
But yeah, there was this weird feeling of like
something's about to happen.
Yeah, but I was like, who's gonna come out?
Yeah.
And just couldn't think. And then some music starts, and you see Britt kind of being like, well, what's happening?
Badass music, by the way.
Yeah, and it was just fucking amazing. I mean, crowd went fucking insane.
Yeah. It
was great.
So this will be, I had this feeling last night, and we'll talk about it more, the main event. I feel like there's about to be a new era of AEW, it feels like. And I'll touch on that more when we talk about the main event. But, like, we're about to have a shift, and this is a pivotal point to where is AEW going to go in the future, and who's going to kind of lead them there to that, so quote unquote wrestling promised land or whatever, to where they legitimately make themselves a number 2 and maybe even 1B company here in North America. So it feels like you got the Acclaim winning last night, AEW Originals. You have this debut that happened last night. And then you have the main event that came up next and what that kind of symbolizes in a nutshell. So I guess we can go ahead and talk about the main event.
Yeah. So, obviously we had Jon Moxley versus Bryan Danielson. I went back and forth all night on which way this was going to go down. At first, I was texting with my buddy Eddie, and I was like, "Hey, they're gonna put the belt on Mox, and then MJF's gonna cash in. Mox is gonna get his vacation." And then at one point, I was like, "I don't know." It's like they could play up this whole leg injury angle with Danielson. They just beat the shit out of each other for 20 minutes, and then Danielson somehow gets the pin, and he's limping around the ring. MJF cashes in. He's the champ.
Yeah.
And, I mean, they were leaning into that shit, because if they cut to MJF in the skybox once, they did it 1,000 fucking times.
Well, I knew here was a dead giveaway. MJF wasn't cashing in last night. He had already showed up by the time we got to the main event. He showed up against Yuta and cut the promo.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, he's not winning tonight. He's not going to do it.
Oh.
They will, because otherwise you would hold that.
Yeah.
You'd hold that card until the very end.
Well, we didn't even talk about him slapping.
Oh yeah, he slapped
Tony Schiavone.
And then Tony Schiavone was he made a business decision. You ain't getting no free back bumps here on this damn stage. I'm gonna go down on my knees and there was that little spat between it really is nothing. I think it's just setting up MJF versus Blackpool Combat Club. Some member of that. But yeah, when he came out earlier in the show, I was like, oh, he's not. Nothing's gonna happen.
Okay.
But this match between Danielson and Moxley, I mean, it's just, we say it every week. It's you got Bryan Danielson is a virtuoso of fucking professional wrestling, and no matter who he is in the ring with, you're gonna get an A+ caliber wrestling match. Those chops sounded like fucking shotgun blast.
Yeah.
In that stadium, and like the fact that he has, at his age, changed up his entire style so that he can wrestle long term. Because what does he really do when you think about a Bryan Danielson match? It's chops, it's kicks,
holds.
Hell, he's not doing a lot of high impact stuff. He can wrestle this way for another 5 years.
That's what I texted Eddie. I said, so we're going to get 20, 25 minutes of these two guys just beating the hell out of each other. I said, nothing flashy.
Yeah.
No, big spots. I said, but they're going to beat the shit out of each other.
And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And, Moxley he's a huge star.
Yeah.
I love every moment where his music hits and he comes out walking out a little bit before the vocals start, and then everyone just on that first wild thing says it in unison, and it's just like going crazy. If you'll notice, I think they cut away from him when Moxley was coming out. He looked at the camera, and then he turned back and was like, look at all these people. And the camera cut back to that stupid-ass wide shot. But I think he said, this is my company. I don't know if that's a shot. You know, now we have to read all these things on multiple layers. I don't know if that's a shot to Punk. I don't know if that's a shot to the Elite. But here's the thing. We had a great show last night. No Young Bucks, no Kenny Omega, no CM Punk.
I mean, I haven't had it for 3 weeks.
Hadn't had it for 3 weeks. This has been a great 3 weeks of television. Does AEW need those guys? I don't know.
We kind of had this discussion yesterday before the show. You know, at this point, if I'm Khan, I tell Punk to kick rocks, and I save that money to put into MJF's contract. That's what you said yesterday.
Yeah,
and that's what I was texting with Eddie last night. I said, look, I said this company don't need him.
I don't think so, and I'm not necessarily so sure it needs Omega and the Bucks either.
And I would agree. It would kind of suck to have Kenny be healthy and then all of a sudden he's gone now.
Yeah, I'm not saying I want that to happen.
Sure, but at this point, I mean, they've been putting on great fucking shows.
Yeah,
you know, it'd be a shame to lose Omega and the Bucks at this point with Punk. Man, I say let him walk. You know, the report we were laughing yesterday because there was quote unquote mandatory talent meeting. You know, and then Fightful was reporting that people behind the scenes said the atmosphere has been pretty great the last 3 weeks. I'm like, okay, well that's because.
Well, they said specifically addition by subtraction, but didn't specify who was subtracted that made the whole thing additive.
I mean, it's
so
pretty obvious.
Yeah,
but you know, it seems like, you know, Punk's arrival, while good for the fans, has not been good for morale.
Yeah, and it seemed that way. And like last night, I mean, everybody gave it their all, you know, including Danielson and Moxley in the ring. I mean, they are the blueprint for this is how we expect professional wrestling in AEW to be, which is every time you're on screen, there's no half-assing. It's going to be full bore all the way. And there were a lot of people that were disappointed because they thought last night was Danielson's moment. I didn't think they were ever going to put the belt on Danielson because this thing ain't staying on Moxley for long.
Right.
And when I mentioned when I alluded to earlier, like a new era of AEW, it seemed like they wanted to give Moxley the belt here. And it felt like at the end of that match, them pumping up the fact that he's a 3-time AEW World Champion. This was his moment in front of that sold-out crowd at Arthur Ashe as the company to be like, thank you, Jon Moxley, for literally everything you've done.
You the real MVP.
Since we did it from the beginning.
Yeah.
You have carried us. You carried us through a pandemic. You know, he was the first big-name WWE star that jumped straight to AEW. Through the pandemic, through these injuries, he has put on nothing but really, really good professional wrestling television. And so him getting the belt is a thank you, but it ain't staying there because the new era of AEW is coming, and it's going to be ushered in by the dude sitting in the skybox with the scarf, MJF. And listen, they're not going to keep that dude a heel for long. Let's just put that out there. It's not happening. He is too good. Even last night when he's insulting the crowd at that Yuta promo. They're in all the way. This is Rock level type stuff where he's trying to insult the crowd, but they don't give a shit because it's so good they want to cheer for it.
I kind of wondered last night if some of that was because it was in New York or if it was just because he's so fucking over.
No, this is going to happen. Get ready. It's going to start happening in arenas across the country.
Yeah.
They have, and it's a testament to everybody. It's a testament to AEW. It's a testament to MJF. You know, I think I've tweeted about this on our Twitter account. Like, he strikes me as a type of person that when he says he wants to be the greatest professional wrestler that ever lived, he means it. Like, he looks like he's on like some GOAT level type potential shit here.
Yeah.
Whereas if you'll go watch that interview with Errol Helwani on the MMA Hour, like his ability to blend fiction and reality and work seamlessly in and out of character to where it's little things like when he's talking about, I think in that interview, one of the greatest parts of it was when Hawani asked him about AEW and like what the morale is like. And MJF first answers in character and says, oh, well, I'm not, MJF only cares about MJF. But, like, looking from the outside, it's a team atmosphere and we have stars. And his ability to blend then into becoming some kind of a natural person to let you see the facade of here's the real guy behind the character. And I'll give you a little bit of insight, but I'm going to go right back into character mode. This is brilliant stuff. This is like the artistic kind of apex of what professional wrestling can be in 2022 with this modern day media attention. I think my original tweet was, if you wanted to know what Ric Flair would look like in today's age, like this is it. This is the guy. Yeah. So I think last night was
Hey the Man.
Was hey John Moxley, we appreciate all of it. You're still going to be a big star going forward. Here's the title. You're the first time three-time AEW World Champion, but you're going to drop this thing to MJF come November. And we're going to ride this wave of here is a new era of stars, hopefully with like a Ricky Starks and an Acclaimed. And we're going to get back to kind of what it felt like AEW was from day one. But now you have guys like Danielson and Moxley and Adam Cole coming back. You have all these dudes now where you can have all these storylines that naturally emerge. Because when Danielson gets his first title win, it needs to be a long run. It doesn't need to be a transitionary title to where he just immediately goes to somebody else. That's not how you do that character. I don't even really know if Danielson wants to be a champ at this point. I think he just wants to go out there and chop the shit out of people for 25 minutes. Like, I think he's just on like some artistic stuff where he's like, I just want to come in and wrestle, man. I don't have to be the champion. Like, if you want to put it on me, cool, but like I don't have to do that. I think there's a story to be told at some point. With Danielson, obviously.
It's funny because you and I were talking about Sean Penn yesterday afternoon, and I started thinking about that, and I was like, Sean Penn's just doing what he wants at this point in his career.
Right, and you have to think wrestling in that same kind of mindset that these guys are artists, and there's a lot of guys like that want to make the big money and be the stars and have the name in the marquee. Danielson's done all that before. Yeah. I mean, you go back and watch WrestleMania 30 where he has his WrestleMania moment, double champion. Everyone in the New Orleans crowd is doing the yes chant. So he's had all that before. Yeah. Now I think he just wants to kind of play with some stuff and do some things he couldn't do at the other place. Yeah. And again, we're moving towards MJF. And when MJF gets the title, they're already playing up this 2024 thing. He's going to need to hold it. If he gets it at Full Gear, which I think he will, and then they'll probably do some kind of thing where Moxley gets beat down so bad and gets injured where they ride him off television for a couple months. And you let MJF just do his thing. He's going to hold this thing till January. Yeah. And in that year time frame, what you need to then do as you have this long MJF title reign where he's got the firm behind him and it's this reign of terror and nobody can topple him, you build up a babyface that then can go tackle MJF, take the title from him. And it needs to be somebody. It doesn't need to be a Danielson, and it doesn't need to be a Moxley, and it doesn't need to be a Hangman Page. It doesn't need to be somebody that has already been a champion. This is the time when, like, for the next year, you build up a Ricky Starks, or you build up a Wardlow, or somebody that then topples the MJF going into January 2024. And then, if this thing's a shoot, then you do have a bidding war in 2024. And if it's not a shoot, and he's already signed a contract extension and got a bunch of his money, you ride him off television for a couple months, and then he comes back. Yeah. But like I said, they're going to try to get MJF over as a heel. I don't think it's going to happen. And at the very least, you're going to have the audience be split 50-50. You even saw a little bit last night, and I get that they're in New York. But it's a little bit Flair-like in that you start having people show up in suits and scarves like MJF. That's the same thing that happened with Flair in the 80s, where you have guys in the crowd, little yuppies they got the suits on like him. That's going to start coming down. Yeah. So we're gearing up to be the reign of Maxwell Jacob Friedman, and
there hasn't been a whole lot of that before. Like, you would see like one Burberry scarf somewhere in the crowd or whatever.
Yeah.
but there was quite a bit there last night. And then, like I said, one dude was full on, had his hair cut just like him and everything.
And again, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, like audience reactions do matter even when you're watching on television, because now if I'm at home and I'm going to the AEW show next week and I'm sitting there watching the week before and I'm like, oh, that dude's dressed up like MJF, that's cool, I'm going to do that too. Or that sign is really cool, I'm going to make a sign like that. And then it trickles down that way. You know, we talked about, I think the dude to topple MJF would be an Eddie Kingston in a year.
I wouldn't be mad at it.
And you can take that year and really build up Eddie and tell a really interesting story. And go from, you know, the most buttoned up athletes in MJF with suits to the most rugged of rugged athletes in Eddie Kingston.
God, that'd be great.
So this is, it feels like a new era is coming, or is actually kind of already here.
Yeah.
Because, again, there is a metaphor to be said for Moxley and Danielson are down here, and then you have MJF up in the skybox as sort of the shining star of what this company is about to be, while also thanking the guys who have built it up to the place it is now. Not to say that Moxley's not going to be a star when he comes back. That dude is over like Red Rover, you know.
Yeah.
He is he's their ace, and he's going to be there for as long as AEW is a company, unless he gets the itch to go back to WWE. To which, at that point, a fucking Dean Ambrose Roman Reigns match at this point with these guys' careers, with Triple H at the helm, who would play up the fact that Jon Moxley or that Dean Ambrose has gone to other places and become world champion. I mean, there's a story to be told there for sure.
Well, speaking of WWE, let's wrap up the AEW section of the show. Let's touch on a little bit of WWE. You started watching a little bit more here and there. And I've got a real good feeling I'm going to tune in around 8:23 on Friday night.
So that's a big thing. So we'll be brief here about this stuff because there was only a handful of things I actually want to talk about. The White Rabbit stuff with WWE, like, this is brilliant level storytelling. You know, they have been doing these things to where they're not holding the audience's hand anymore. Meaning that, like, they understand how social media works, which is something Vince never got. So, like, yeah, at 5 o'clock on a random Monday, we're going to stage a fight between Seth Rollins and Matt Riddle, and we're going to make sure it happens out in the parking lot where the fans are waiting, because one of them fans is going to pull out their cell phone and record it and put it up on Twitter, and people are going to be like, oh, this is what the hell's going on. The fans are going to help tell the story for us. Or Monday night, we're going to put up a little QR code next to Austin Theory's head, and we're not going to say anything about it, but we're going to know that somebody's going to go to that QR code and then post on social media this trippy little fucking video. You know, this White Rabbit stuff has not been mentioned actually on the television show whatsoever. They've been playing the song at live events and just rolling right into the matches, and they did this QR code, and it's just brilliant stuff. It's everything that modern day professional wrestling can be, with all the avenues we have to be able to tell stories. And so, yeah, if we're recording this on Thursday, if Bray Wyatt comes walking down that ramp at 8:23 our time, 9:23 Eastern time tomorrow night, it's going to be a big fucking deal.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a fuck you to Rampage, because they know Rampage is trying to have a big show. It's a live show tomorrow. Live shows are usually better. It's a 2-hour show, so it's a little bit.
By the way, as they should. Yeah, it's competition. Yeah. Like, competition is going to drive these two products to be better. Right. So, like,
I mean, I've had Smackdown on in the background some, like, when I've been at home on Friday nights lately, but, like, I haven't really paid that much attention. There was that first week Triple H was in charge. I watched a little more closely, but, like, I haven't given it really any thought. But I'm gonna watch tomorrow night at about 8:15. I'm gonna turn the TV on.
Yeah, and so it's annoying to see this tribalism that has broken out online between staunch AEW fans and staunch WWE fans, where they just won't budge from their position that their quote unquote their company is better. when it's just like you should be rooting for just good pro wrestling, and you should be rooting for as many companies as possible to be successful and as many people watching professional wrestling as possible, because then these guys and these men and women can jump between promotions and they can make more money and they can get people talking and they can get this thing that we all love, get it a little bit more mainstream to where it's kind of taken seriously. And the way you do it is, you know, you have Twitter break out with everyone passing around the little white rabbit stuff, and you get interest that way, and you build it up. And
so if it's not Bray Wyatt, it's a severe letdown.
If it's yeah. Now that's the caveat here. If it's anybody else, it has to be Bray Wyatt, though. They wouldn't do this way if it wasn't,
right? Or
at least you shouldn't. It's a severe miscalculation if they think it can be anybody else but Bray Wyatt and have people give a shit. It has to be him, and I think it will be now.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this on a Saturday and it's, you know, it actually is Karrion Kross, resuming his Lucha Underground gimmick, then yeah, we'll talk about it next week. This is stupid as shit, but I think Bray Wyatt's going to come walking out on Smackdown, and I mean the whole host of possibilities you can do there is, I mean, letting that a creative genius like that and kind of unshackling him a little bit from the chains of Vince McMahon. And if Hunter's kind of giving this guy free reign, I mean, we might be in for some real trippy, genre-bending, groundbreaking kind of storytelling happening inside the squared circle over at WWE, so it should be good. And then, of course, on Monday Night Raw, you got the Dexter Lumis stuff that's still happening, which is just like, I'm now tuning in just to see which other way, what else can he pop out of. This week, I told you about the home invasion last week. This week, they come out, Miz TV. Miz is going to have a segment of Miz TV. He's inviting Dexter Lumis. He's going to confront him face-to-face. And then what happens? Dexter Lumis doesn't show up. Miz is cutting a promo. All of a sudden, fucking knives shoot up from underneath the ring, and he starts cutting, and Dexter Lumis cuts a hole, pops up out the hole, drags Miz down. Just like, it's like, if next week he pops out of a birthday cake, like, it's going to be just great television. He still has not yet uttered a single word, this Lumis guy. I never watched him in NXT, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But, like, I mean, I'm fully invested. And then the real kicker, the best thing that's happening in WWE right now, is that Sami Zayn is going on the run of a lifetime, being the most charismatic, funny, but yet not hokey and corny, still compelling character in wrestling right now. His honorary Uce story is just this is.
I haven't seen any of it, but you telling me about it a couple days ago, which is cracking me up.
This is the type of stuff where 10, 15 years from now, whoever is on the top of WWE is going to be given an interview, and the interviewer is going to ask them, like, what's some favorite moments in wrestling that you remember? They're going to talk about the Sami Zayn honorary Uce stuff, because this is the stuff that transcends and makes its way into the history books. I mean, it's top-notch work, and that there's literally not a single person that I can think of in wrestling right now that can do what he's doing. There's nobody in WWE, right? Kevin Owens couldn't do any of this honorary Uce stuff because the way his character is presented, it's not presented in that kind of fashion. So, like, Sami Zayn is one of one, and his coming out dancing with Solo Sikoa, his relationship with Jay not being so great, and his relationship with Roman Reigns. They do the fucking press conference with Roman Reigns and Logan Paul, and who's standing beside him is fucking Sami Zayn is in the picture. Like, it's fantastic stuff.
What was it you tweeted a couple nights ago? You're like, I'm just trying to, like, dip back into WWE, but if they're doing Roman Reigns versus Logan Paul, I'm out.
Yeah, I was like, WWE's really good. I think they pull me back in, and then I tweeted the match graphic, like, seize this, and I was like, all right, I'm out. Which, here's the thing, like, do I want to see it? No, but I get it. And luckily, there's enough other stuff in WWE to keep my attention. There's Kevin Owens is going on a little bit of a run right now.
Look, Logan Paul had a great match at Mania, but why is he getting a shot at Roman Reigns?
Because this Saudi crown prince wants him to. And so that's what's happening.
That show. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, they're not, and he ain't gonna win. It's just
sure.
You get, the advantage of having Logan Paul is that he has a lot of followers, and so you bring in those followers to WWE and you try to give them, you try to hook them with something else on the show.
Yeah.
But just wrapping up here, because I know we want to talk about some other stuff. I don't know if they will do this, because obviously dangling in front of Roman Reigns and his run is a potential match with The Rock. You have a Cody Rhodes injury. He could be back by the time Royal Rumble starts. If they wanted to build up Sami Zayn as an underdog babyface to finally beat Roman Reigns and win the WWE title, there's a story to be told there that I think would be, honestly, pretty great stuff in terms of, in line with like a Daniel Bryan type run to his top of the card. Like I said, I don't know if they go in that direction. I don't know if they go to Roman versus Sammy. Probably not. I think it'll be Roman and The Rock at WrestleMania. Whether there's a title on the line at that point or not, who knows? But yeah, at some point I kind of want to see those two go at it, because I think you have even though Sammy is a heel right now, he's getting that reaction from the crowd, and so naturally, whenever you turn him, you can turn him into a babyface.
Yeah.
And we've seen him do it before, but now it would be what his NXT run was times 1,000, right? Because now he's going up against the biggest star of this generation in Roman Reigns. So I don't know if they'll go that route. They probably won't, but it's out there. For right now, I'm just enjoying seeing Sammy dancing his way to the ring with one of the Usos and holding up the ones. Mr. Honorary Us, Sami Zayn. It's incredible stuff.
So let's get to our Twitter prompt of the week. Yesterday it was, what's your favorite wrestling memory? So give me yours real quick, and I'll get into some of the.
So mine really is, and I think it's. So I guess it was probably 96 or whatever when I first started watching wrestling that I can remember, and it was the storyline of Sting turning into the Crow and being up on top of the rafters and kind of just terrorizing the NWO with different points on Monday Night Nitro. I was just 6 years old being like, this is the coolest shit I've ever seen in my life. The dude he got the face paint and he's got the bat, and just the way they told that story. I do think that Sting versus the NWO is the greatest story that pro wrestling has ever told, just because the dude didn't talk for a year. Now, that comes with a caveat, and I think I mentioned this before. The ending match between the two was just absolutely hot garbage. But the story was great. And then I'll tell this story really briefly. The best moment from my in-ring career, as short as it was, I think I've told you this story off mic, but I don't know if I've ever said it here on the podcast. So I was probably 19 years old, and some guys in the locker room were like, hey, we're going to go next week. We're going down to the Tuscaloosa County Fairgrounds.
I've heard this.
We're going to wrestle at the Tuscaloosa County Fairgrounds. Do you want to come? The promoter's looking for somebody else. I was like, yeah, sure. They were like, yeah, it's going to be like a $50 payday. And I was like, holy, $50? Holy shit. I'm used to making $5 a night. Like $50? Hell yeah, I go.
That's a lot of Taco Bell.
That's a hell of a lot of Taco Bell, especially at that time. So we drive down there. We get there in the locker room. The promoter comes up, introduce himself. He's like, hey, you're going to be working with this dude. He's super, super green, but you're going to keep it short, 3-4 minutes. His thing is that he has a snake, like a boa constrictor. And so for the finish, he's going to choke slam you, put the snake on your chest, and that's it. I'm like, okay. I'm not terrified of snakes. This will be whatever. It'll be cool. $50. Like, fuck it. For 5 minutes of work, yeah, I'll do it. I meet the kid, and he's probably the same age I am, but he's just a country fed. He's wrestling in overalls, like a Haystacks Calhoun type thing. He's like 6'5". I'm talking to him about what we're going to do in the beginning of the match. Keep in mind, we only got 3 minutes. We can't do much. He's just like blank. He has no idea what I'm talking about. This dude's probably been wrestling for like weeks. I'm like, you know what? Whatever. We'll come through a crowd. We'll make it quick and short. We'll do a couple spots. That's it. We get into the ring. We immediately lock up going to the first spot. He fucks up just right off the gate. Well, I'm pissed off. So I start laying in shots real hard. It's not affecting this kid at all. He's shrugging it off. None of it matters. Whatever, we do the match. We get to the finish. Choke slam, boa constrictor. Crowd goes crazy. Whatever, I roll out the ring. We come to the back. The promoter's like, hey, that's an awesome job. The kid's like, hey, man, appreciate it a lot. Didn't even acknowledge the fact that I was like trying to actually like lay some stuff in pretty steep. I wasn't trying to shoot on him, but I was like, I'm going to lay these shots in. He just shrugged it off. Like, I was just, all right, I guess I am weak as shit. But the guys I was traveling with, they were going on later in the show, so I just kind of hung out in the back. So we get to the end of the show. We're on our way home. We're driving from Tuscaloosa back to the Shoals. We come across, it's a Saturday night, we come to one of those DUI checkpoints state troopers have put out. We pull up. State trooper, the driver, hands the state trooper the card. There's 2 state troopers. The second state trooper, I'm sitting in the back seat. I can see out the window that he is shining his flashlight at each. There's 4 people in the car. He's shining his flashlight at each individual person. And I can just see the Rolodex going through his head being like, why are these people in a car? Because the driver was a black dude, good friend of mine. The dude in the passenger seat was like an emo-looking kind of like 20-year-old, had like the hair and all that kind of stuff. I'm just like a normal, regular-looking dude in the back seat, regular-looking teenager. Beside me is a little person who had like, if you remember, if your fans were watching at the time, they had a miniature battle royal, and it was all little people where they had like a little version of Kane and a little version of Mr. Kennedy. He was the little version of Mr. Kennedy on Monday Night Raw. They came out, and they did the thing where they dropped the microphone, but he was too small to jump up and reach it. Like back when they thought that humor was kind of funny and acceptable in that time.
Please tell me they didn't do that.
Black dude, emo dude, me, little person in the back seat, and the state trooper's like, I should pull these dudes out. Like something has to be going on that's not right. And so he walks over and talks to the other guy, and the trooper leans his head back in. He goes, where are you guys coming from? And then the driver told him, like, oh, we're wrestlers coming from the fairground. And he was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But, like, I wish I could have captured the look on that state trooper's face as he's going through all the scenarios in his head about why these 4 people are in a car at the same time. Because it makes, in a nutshell, it makes no sense, right? Yeah. So that's my 2 stories, 2 memories that I have.
Well, let's get to some of the Twitter responses. So Blue Gillen says, watching Ric Flair defend the NWA title against Mr. Olympia at the Montgomery Civic Center in 1983. This was in the aftermath of this amazing angle, and the angle was Ric Flair, quote, cure to Idol mania. Idol had pinned Flair.
Yeah, I think it was Austin Idol. I think back in Southeastern Wrestling, Continental Wrestling, back in the early 80s. This was really before Flair and the Horseman stuff really kind of took off in the mid to late 80s. And what he's referencing there, so Flair, you know, if you're kind of new to wrestling, Flair was the National Wrestling Alliance heavyweight champion. And so his job was to go to the different territories and wrestle guys who, some of them had no business being in the ring with him whatsoever. But his job was to basically go to all these towns and do 60-minute matches and you know, pop the crowd. You know, my grandmother remembers watching Flair wrestle at the Lauderdale Coliseum in Florence because he would just travel literally around the country doing that. And that was the responsibility of the NWA champion. All the territories that were under the National Wrestling Alliance banner, they got their week with the champ. And you would come in, you would book your biggest shows, like Ric Flair's coming into town, you'd promote it. The champion was picked by the council, so I think the only thing you couldn't do, you could do whatever you wanted with the champion. Obviously, you couldn't beat him for the title. You could have a title match, but Flair would have to win, or whoever, Harley Race, whoever was the champion would have to win. But yeah, all these little territories got their moment with the champion, and they would do these shows, and yeah, people remember seeing guys like that. Like, but yeah, I remember seeing Flair in the 80s. Like, it's wild stuff, man.
So the next one was Chase Gilmer. Chase says, in person was being at NXT TakeOver New Orleans, which in my opinion is the best WWE show of the last 15 years, and on TV, seeing Stone Cold helping Mankind defeat The Rock for the title.
And that Stone Cold Mankind, we were in the car when you read that tweet, and I was like, yeah, that's the gif everybody plays. Whenever something crazy happens, and everybody puts the big heads on everybody's individual faces, where like Stone Cold comes down, hits a chair, drags Mankind over the top. That's that thing. A lot of these are watching wrestling live in person, and I would just say, like, if you have anybody that is a non-wrestling fan that you're trying to break in to be like, hey, maybe we give this a shot, don't let them watch anything on television. Take them to a show. Take them to a good indie show, not like a bad one, but like if you're here in Alabama, there's New South Pro Wrestling. They do really high-quality stuff. Or if you want to get really crazy, if you want to travel up to the Northeast where it really is a hotbed of indie wrestling, where you can put, a couple hundred people in a small venue and the crowd's kind of rowdy, like that's the draw of pro wrestling, is seeing it live. It really is a better art form experienced in person.
So next up, Drew Brooks says WWE was still giving Ryback his initial push after Alabama beat LSU for the national championship. Raw was in Baton Rouge, and they billed his opponents from Tuscaloosa. They came to the ring, started chanting "Roll Tide," and he treated them like rag dolls for about 2 minutes.
Oh, Ryback.
I don't know much about Ryback, but I hear he's not a good dude.
Yeah, I think a lot of people had problems with him.
Yeah.
He was bolstered up to the main event scene too quickly and just didn't have the goods to stay there.
Yeah.
But yet again, college football will make its way into everything, won't it?
Yeah.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide, baby. So, We're Having Fun podcast says, the beginning of the invasion angle in 2001. Shane McMahon appearing on Nitro, RVD, and Tommy Dreamer debuting, and the ECW wrestlers doing the slow turn on the WWE. It was so exciting, and then the rest of the invasion happened.
Yep. If you want to talk about botched storylines, it could have been something great. The whole invasion angle, Vince McMahon buying WCW, it all was just squandered.
Yeah.
Which is something that, again, if AEW wants to play up these WWE versus AEW original things, that's a storyline you look back on and be like, what can we learn from this and what can we not do from this? Yeah. It really is a teachable moment in terms of like, this is how we book this and this is how we don't book it. So
the next one is funny as shit. At Riggs Stevenson, a.k.a. Freddie Threepwood, says, anytime these legends made an entrance.
The damn bushwhackers.
I love that. Those are I remember them from when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It's funny as shit.
Yeah.
I love that gif. And then Blaine Duncan says, it's obscure maybe, but a heel in a hockey mask named Lord Humongous, who was rumored to be Sid Vicious years before he hit big, used to wrestle out of the Memphis wrestling circuit, Southeastern Wrestling. He was scary as fuck to be a kid, or scary AF. And then in a house show in Sulligent, though, he turned babyface before he did on TV, and we went wild. He ran in for a save, I think, on TV that Saturday night. He did a similar thing to make the turn official. Awesome story. And he's got a picture of the dude.
Yeah. And so that's another thing, too. Like
I don't know who that is.
Back in the day, a lot of these guys, well, twofold. A lot of these guys that were really green to the business, a lot of them would work under mask. Just because a big part of wrestling is the facials.
Yeah.
But if you have a dude that is so kind of worried about getting the moves right and getting the flow of the match that he forgets the other part of it, you just put him under a mask till he gets comfortable, and then when he gets comfortable, you take him out of it, right? But then, the Sid Vicious stuff, that would happen. There you can watch YouTube videos of the Undertaker, Mark Calloway, at the territories working on a gimmick. Like Hulk Hogan was in Memphis for a little bit before he went to WWE. There's all kinds of little gold mines from that kind of late 70s, early 80s, really before wrestling and WWF really took off, that a lot of these guys are in territories. And some guys, even when they were on WWF and they just weren't connecting with the crowd, Vince would be like, hey, you need to go down to Memphis for a little bit. and get some work with Jerry the King Lawler and get some seasoning down there before you come back up here. Like, it really did work back in those days, really like a developmental system or a minor league, either way minor league baseball does, where sometimes some guys get called up, it doesn't work out, you send them back down to Double-A and let them work on what they need to fix and bring them back up. So
I mean, they did that. Braves did that with Kyle Wright, and now this motherfucker's got the most wins in the regular season.
yeah, it's hard to do now because everything is so there just aren't a lot of places like that to work.
Right.
A lot of the territories have dried up, but yeah, back in the day, it used to happen all the time.
Yeah. And then Amber LaFontra says the day that Ryback took his ball and non-talented ass and skipped Sheffield all the way home for good.
So the Ryback heat continues.
Yeah.
Not a big fan out there for not a lot of Ryback love.
And so this one was let me make sure I've got everybody covered here. I believe I do. Yeah, so the last one we have is from Jay Cooper. He says, when Tommy Wildfire Rich became a villain for a bit. And that is before my time, for sure.
Yeah, that is, I'm probably going to get my dates wrong here. That would also be around NWA, maybe 80, 85, 86, 87, somewhere in that era. Tommy Wildfire Rich. What a hell, that's first of all, hell of a nickname, Wildfire Rich.
Yeah, not bad.
Not bad. Also, real quick before we wrap up, I had an idea. Remember we talked about last week, we didn't know what to do with Sammy Guevara and his gimmick, and he needed some character rehabilitation.
Well, hopefully he's fixing to get his ass whooped by Eddie Kingston Friday night.
So I got a little quick pitch. I'll be very brief about this. Here's an idea I had in the shower that we'll put out to the listeners of the Alabama Slam podcast. Let's workshop this thing around. Let's see if we can help Sammy Guevara out because he's talented. Sammy Guevara Friday nights gets his ass whooped by Eddie Kingston. He goes away. He comes back.
He's teased this whole, I don't know what I'm going to do.
It's the end of the thing, right?
Yeah.
So he comes back after a couple weeks off television, comes back. He blames the fans for everything. He says, I've jumped off ladders for you guys. I've done crazy 450s. I've put my body on the line. I've taken years off my career. You know what? No more. I'm not after 5-star ratings anymore. I am single-star Sammy Guevara. And that's all he says. And then we build this up to where the next week he wrestles a jobber. And the whole match is just rest holds. He puts him in chin locks. He puts him in arm ringers. He does no high-impact moves. He takes the wrestling style of AEW and runs in the completely opposite direction where it's just he's boring on purpose. But you would have to get this gimmick over to where I think you could get some fans really kind of fucking booing him if you played up that character right. But could you imagine if he just put a random jobber in a chin lock for like 3 minutes and you just showed that on television? It's just it's a chin lock and he's working it. And the jobber tries to get up and he just brings him right back down, puts him on a chokehold. And the whole time you put a camera right there in close up and he's yelling at the fans.
Yeah.
You did this. This is what you deserve.
Yeah.
So that's just an idea I had.
I could be getting thrown off a fucking cage.
Yeah, because he's had crazy spots. The ladder match with Cody, the 450 he hit on Scorpio that he didn't hit, he just landed because he missed him completely. So single-star Sammy Guevara with the purpose of putting on the most boring match possible in the hopes of finally getting some real-life kind of heat. I don't know. Let's workshop it. Let's see if we can help to do that.
Yeah, somebody holler at Tony Khan. I know we've got some connections in town here, some folks that know Conrad Thompson. So y'all holler at Conrad. Let Conrad holler at Tony. Get this thing moving.
And he has on his trunks just Sammy Guevara, and then afterwards just one little star. Like FTR has the 7 stars on the jacket.
Yeah.
He's just the one.
I love it. I love it.
Could work.
So let's talk about what's done up real good, and I'll go first because it's early and you may not have thought of anything yet.
Yeah, I didn't think of anything.
I'm gonna go with Pearl Jam. I've been a Pearl Jam fan since 1991. Never got to see him live. For whatever reason, I just kept missing out on them. And then in the later years, they've played mostly festivals when they've been in the South. And I'm not a festival guy. So I bought tickets 3 years ago, February of 2020. Is that 3 years? Yeah. And a couple of years, whatever. But bought tickets in February 2020, and then COVID happened. And show got postponed, and it just got rescheduled for this year. So I saw him last weekend. Life-changing experience, fucking amazing. I was 3 rows from the very front, and the set list was awesome. And they're everything a rock and roll band should be. It was just a great show. I was in a room with 20,000 people singing along. It's fucking awesome. Can't recommend it enough. And you yesterday was like, I only know 2 Pearl Jam songs. And then we got in the car on the way home, and I was like, you know this one, you know that one. Started playing through a bunch of them, and you knew way more than you thought you did.
Pearl Jam was just before. I was a little too young.
Yeah.
At the height of it. And then I told you the Pearl Jam album I had was Backspacer, and you're like, oh, they didn't play anything from Backspacer. And I was like, well, shit, that's the only one I really know front to back because my stepdad's mom got me that for Christmas, thinking they're like, because the stepdad was like, oh, he's a music fan. And she was like, oh, well, he'll like this band from the 90s when he was 4 years old. Why don't we just get the new album from them? I literally never heard of them before.
Yeah.
Had the Fixer on it. That's the only song I really dug.
Not a good album to jump into if you don't know anything.
She got me that and U2.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay.
It's a weird combo.
I mean, at that time, what was it, 2000, 2002, 2003 maybe? So you're talking about like the rise of like hip hop and all that stuff. It's like the Usher, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, and she's like, "Hey, here's Pearl Jam." Okay, appreciate it. That didn't last long anyway. So,
well, do you have anything that's done up real good for you?
I don't have anything. Rather than try to bullshit, we've gone. Wrestling is awesome. Everything's working pretty well right now. So. Yeah. Everything is gonna be good, and we appreciate everybody listening and helping us out with these Twitter prompts. We're trying to build this community, so if you like it, let your friends know if they like wrestling. We're trying to make this an inclusive, participatory podcast where we hear from you guys, and we got a small little following now, a little bit of listeners, but we appreciate the hell out of all of you.
For sure. Let's look ahead just for a second before we get out of here. Friday night should be really fun. There's pretty stacked card for Friday Night Rampage. Hopefully we'll see Kingston beat the fuck out of 1-star Sammy Guevara, and there's some other great ones happening. I think Jungle Boy versus Ray. I think Jack Perry versus Ray Phoenix.
Yeah, we're gonna stop calling him Jungle Boy on this podcast.
Yeah, I think that'll be a good one.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll, and then Ricky Starks, man. Ricky Starks and Powerhouse. Do you think they squash Ricky again and do our boy bad?
No, because I think it's a lights out match. So like I told you, like that's if you're gonna squash Starks, you do the next match and no DQ. That way he can use weapons and level the playing field that way. Yeah. So that's smart. Yeah, that
should be a banger, man. I mean, Team Ricky and Team Eddie on Friday night. I'm loving it.
Yep.
And where do we go from here on Dynamites on Wednesday? Like, I mean,
MJF becomes the star, and he says, I'm doing it at Full Gear or before. Do they just pop it next week?
Yeah, because they were very blatant last night. There was at one point Excalibur just goes, he can cash in whenever he wants.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, that's happening tonight.
You could do it next week. You could wait till Full Gear. I mean, they probably wait till Full Gear just because
that seems like, if you didn't do it last night, Full Gear seems like the move.
Yeah. And then you just have MJF, you tell him, like, hey, you're the star now.
Yeah.
So go, this promotion's yours. You're the guy in charge. Go run with it and take us to the top.
Yeah. Well, y'all follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Alabama Slam Pod, and follow the Alabama Take on Facebook. That's like our main networking page. We've got several podcasts through the Alabama Take. Blaine Duncan and friends have Taking It Down. It's a weekly pop culture podcast. I just started a new Star Wars podcast with a couple friends called We Are Star War. And there's a monthly book podcast called Check Your Shelf with hosted by my lovely wife. And This Song Sucks comes back real soon. They've been teasing their next season for a little while. So look us up on TeePublic. You can get Alabama Slam and Alabama Take t-shirts there, and any of the money made from that goes back into the upkeep of the site. And we really appreciate y'all listening, man. It's been an excellent month for wrestling, and I feel like we'll have another pretty solid show next week, coming off a Rampage and a potential Bray Wyatt return. Looking forward to seeing what pops off in the next few days.
It should be great. It's a great time to be a wrestling fan.
Yep, y'all are at us. Thanks.
Later, guys.